Hi, I'm Lois Powell. And I'm Susan Schuler, and we're here to share tips, tricks, ideas, and resources to help you discover what's your story.
Hey Lois, how are you?
I'm great, Susan. Are we ready for part 2? I'm excited.
Welcome back to part 2 of your veteran ancestors.
Yes, and we left off, I believe, just before the Civil War.
Right. I think we have a lot of meaty stuff ahead.
Yeah, because the Civil War was really well documented. It's
was.
amazing how much you can find on the Civil War.
We're very lucky.
You want to start us
I
out?
sure do. I want to say, look at the birth years of the men in your family. If you have men who are born between 1820 and 1845, they are prime candidates for Civil War service.
And you should check, therefore, the census.
I think that's an excellent place to start, starting with the 1890 census.
Now, remember, everybody, the 1890s, what happened? We had a fire.
Yes.
So all that's left are the supplemental schedules for the Union veterans of the Civil War and their widows.
Yes. We are very lucky that that is a piece that survived. However, it didn't survive for every state.
Correct.
Yeah, I think it's mostly the 13 colonies. I want to say that it really survived for.
But check, because you never know.
You never know. It's worth the look. Absolutely.
And you should also check the 1910 census.
Yes. The 1910 census will tell you UACA, UNCN, Confederate Navy, Union Army, Confederate Army.
Of course, that's only if they survived in 1910.
No, if they lived that long. None of them in my family lived that long.
Right.
Yeah, typical. So there were 4 Civil War drafts, and the records were divided into 3 different classes. The first draft is married men, 20 to 35, and then unmarried men, 36 to 44, and then married men, 36 to 44, and then the last class was volunteers.
Okay. And keep in mind, there were over 3.5 million men and a few hundred women. So there's a lot to search for.
Absolutely. Another thing to keep in mind is that the regiments were made locally. So if you have like a group of cousins all about the same age, if they went to war, odds are good that they were in the same regiment or that they mustered together that very first time. They might have been separated once battle started, but if they left, they probably left around the same time. They left together if they were around the same age.
And everyone had some type of military service record if they were in a regiment. And some people might have left and then signed into a different regiment in other periods. So if you find one, doesn't mean they didn't serve again, and there might not be another record. There could be.
Especially if you're looking for a Confederate soldier, their regiments got broken up and regrouped all the time. I have one Confederate ancestor, and he started out in Louisiana, and then that regiment was like folded, and they were all shipped to Mississippi. So, look for your person and be broad in your search.
And when you look for it, you might find muster rolls, enlistment and discharge, any wounds or hospitalizations, burial records, draft records might even be available. And even if your ancestor didn't serve, they might have gotten a draft record.
Exactly.
So you want to have all the information you can. And I say there's a lot of information, but I am not one of the fortunate ones who has found any relative on any side. So I hope you have better luck than I did.
Have 3, possibly 4. Right now I'm comfortable saying 3.5. 2 Union, 1 Confederate, and I think another Union coming. But one of them was a prisoner of war, and I found those records. One was one day listed as killed, the next day listed as being in a hospital. Those records are out there, and obviously record keeping wasn't foremost in their mind. I'm sure there was a lot of chaos. But the Soldier and Sailors database provided by the National Park Service is an excellent website, and we will list that in the show notes. But you can find out the battles they fought in, the regiments they fought in, the units, and their function. Were they in the infantry? Were they in the cavalry? Those kind of things. And like I said, I found hospital records, and I thought that I hit the lotto that day, because you think, oh, I'm never going to find anything. It's so long ago, but you can. You just have to look for it and know where to look.
And the Soldiers and Sailors database is an excellent one. We were just talking also finding by state, like the National Archives is a good one.
National Archives is an excellent one by state. And then also if you want to find pension information.
Yes, pension information is good, especially if they fought for the Union.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, somebody filed. If the soldier didn't survive, a widow
widow
might have
did.
filed, but generally somebody filed, and that also would include things like medical history, etc.
So the indexes for the pension files, you can find, Fold 3 is really starting to digitize them. So you can find those, and then it will give their file number. Then you can take that file number over to the National Archive and have them do a search. I've done it. It takes a long time. It costs $90 or $30, depending on what you are looking for. But it can be done. You just have to start with as much information you can. Their state of muster, their age, their home state, and that certificate number if they had a pension. And sometimes they might even have the pension paperwork, even if they got rejected to have a pension.
Another place to look for records, and I had never heard this before until I started, the GAR. This is the Grand Army of the Republic Records. It's actually an organization that was started in 1866, and it's the largest organization for Union veterans. In fact, 40% of Union vets were members by the late 1800s. And I didn't really know what they did, but so with little information, they focused on liberalizing military pension laws. They popularized what we call Memorial Day today. It used to be called Decoration Day. And they also focused on the proper burial of all veterans. And so when you go even looking in large cemeteries, frequently you'll find a section, a GAR section. So that's another big area to look for. Key information you might find for the researchers are what they call the roll of death or the honor roll, which would list all deaths reported in the previous year by local organizations. By the way, they call their localizations posts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You might find the name, the regiment, the date of date of death, but also look at the post records if you can get them, because they will have rosters and meeting minutes of when people joined, who took ill, those who might have gone to a veterans home, all sorts of good information to find. So you want to talk about where we find some of this?
Well, the GAR, I wanted to say, is sort of the precursor to the VFW. It was like the first time that veterans were like sort of cared for.
Yes.
In any like group dynamic. I think it's super important that if you think you have somebody, that you start looking at those records. I wanted to say something about pensions. Your union pension is going to be from the federal government. If you have a Confederate pension, it's going to be issued by the state. So the state archives really come into play here. And they can be found, especially through NARA. But keep in mind, if you had a soldier who fought in Louisiana and then moved to Mississippi, it was up to Mississippi to decide if he could have a pension or not. So he might have done all of the paperwork, but then if Mississippi and Louisiana weren't getting along, he could be rejected. And another piece of that is if you had a soldier who fought in Mississippi or Louisiana or any Confederate state, and then when the war was over, they moved north, they didn't get a pension. They were out of luck.
I was going to say it doesn't seem very fair, but that's just the way it was.
That's the way it was.
So where do we search and how do we search for other records beyond pension?
Well, I think a great place to go is the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress has Civil War maps. If you would try to identify battles, they have a whole array of Civil War photographs, the Matthew Brady photographs and others. It's a great place to look. And I said before, I'll say it again, state archives. Your state archive is the best place to look.
Other places to look is there is a website for the GAR project out there. Look at that, because they will tell you where the records can be located that maybe you don't find in some of the sites that Susan is suggesting at a state level. Family Search and Ancestry also has several roll of honor collections. So there's some different record information there. The big challenge in the whole thing for the GAR, for example, is when a post disbanded, the commander could have sent the records to a library.
Yeah.
Or
local
worse,
society.
Or worse,
took
they could
them
have
home.
trashed them.
Yeah.
So you just have to dig at the state level is
Right.
very important, what Susan's bringing up.
Speaking of the state level, in Ancestry, there's they give you that map and you can click on like just Massachusetts records or just Alabama records. I suggest that you do that. And then once you do that, they have a section called military, and you could see these data sets that we don't think of or certainly don't show up in a general search on the front page of Ancestry. Be very state specific. You'll be surprised at what you can find.
Okay.
The same thing on the Family Search Wiki. I think that's another great place to look. You could look for a specific regiment or a specific battle. When I was working for my one Confederate ancestor, I was doing that all the time. Louisiana infantry, I forget the number now, but I did find a lot about the history of their battles and where they went and all of
It
that.
again brings the person to life. They're not
Absolutely.
just dates and information. There's a lot of information there.
Yeah.
Moving right along, since we're talking death, shall we talk about the burial in the cemeteries
I
for
think we
Civil War
should.
soldiers? Now, Civil War soldiers were often buried near the battlefield. And now, for those of you like me as a kid who were dragged around by their parents to see battlefields, you knew that. What maybe you didn't know is that after the war, many were disinterred and reburied in a local or a national cemetery. And that had a lot to do with what we were just talking about, the GAR who wanted proper burial for everybody. But obviously, the Army couldn't keep track of everybody. There were unmarked graves, wooden markers that rotted away, any number of things. So the Department of Veterans Affairs has a webpage for each of the national cemeteries, as does the National Park Service. I would recommend you check each of those. During the war, World War II, when they had all the work projects in the 1930s, one of the projects was to record the location of all veterans burials.
That's a great project.
I thought it was a terrific project.
Yeah.
So, look around for that sort of information, again, at the Family History Library, state and county historical societies, any of the things we've already talked about, but you might not have known about the WPA project, and maybe we can even do a research on that. Obituaries.
Obituaries, they're beautiful. And the older they are, the more flowery information they contain. They would even list pallbearers, all kinds of things. A great place to look, especially if they died in the war. And I think to add what you were saying to the burial records is I've seen a couple of cases now where their body was buried on the battlefield or near the battlefield, but their family had a stone for them in the local cemetery with their their information on it, the heavy artillery or infantry or whatever their unit was.
Even if they didn't find the body, it gave them a place to go and to grieve and to respect. Yep.
Absolutely. And then there's always Find a Grave and Billion Graves.
Never forget those two. In fact, they're the simplest place to start, to be honest.
Probably the best place to start.
Yep.
For sure.
Now, what if you're looking for Southern ancestors?
Right. There is the Southern Claims Commission. Those records would tell you if people were reimbursed for livestock or property taken by the Union troops. Confederate pardons, applications for pardons, including petitioners' names and residences. And then the recently released Freedman's Bureau.
Yep. And voting registrations. One of the rules of Reconstruction required that Southern states register. It didn't matter if they're white or black, they had to register to vote. So there are voter registrations. Again, we've said this all through the Civil War. We can't state it enough. Go back to your state, go to your counties, look for that kind of information.
Right. And the Freedmen's Bureau, for 7 years after the war, they registered refugees, freemen, abandoned lands. They administered relief to white and black poor, and they recorded black marriages, labor contracts. They had indentures and banking records, as well as land records. It's a good place to look.
It's a good place to look. And if you had a black family who served, there is something called the USCT, the U.S. Colored Troops. That was started back in 1863. Mm-hmm. And they record the Afro-Americans that were served in the Army and the Navy. So definitely give them a try as well.
Absolutely.
So I think that pretty much covers the Civil War.
I think so. What war is next, Lois?
I believe 1812.
I think so. Short of the national anthem, I don't know a whole lot about the War of 1812.
Well, it was fought in 1812. I can tell you that.
And I think it went all the way to 1815, did it not?
It did. And in the 1812, you might find records again. Like, for example, in the 1840 census, you could find some information. There's not a lot about 1812, but there are quite a few websites you can look into, and Ancestry, Foldtree. There's the War of 1812 prisoner of war records that you could research. So there are quite a few smaller databases, but there's not a lot of information on the War of 1812. We would start with the basics. I would always start with, again, the grave sites, the obituaries, all the things we've been talking about to get yourself into the War of 1812.
I think that's a great place to start. Your grave sites, your census, your family tree wiki, your ancestry card catalog are probably your
biggies,
best places to begin.
Right. So that's a short one, but we've covered a lot of common topics for every war, and just apply that and do your searches.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you want to move on to our last one, which is the Revolutionary War?
We should move on to the Revolution. Are you ready to talk about the U.S. Revolutionary War?
I am.
Yes. You don't sound happy about it, though, Lois.
Oh, no, I think the Revolutionary War is pretty fascinating, but maybe that's because I found a relative.
Oh, even better.
So that makes it exciting.
So much more fun when you find a relative.
Actually, not my relative, my husband's relative.
Well, still.
But close enough, right?
There you go. Very close.
Absolutely.
Related by marriage.
Related by marriage.
Yes. Across generations.
Now, the Revolutionary War, there is information on, and especially if someone has done the research for you. There are a lot of people like the Daughters of the American Revolution or the Sons of the American Revolution who have already proven their relationship and submitted those records. And I'm going to tell you that's a great place to start. And you can find many of them on the big websites like Ancestry or Family Search that will each give you that information. And if you have to go to the Daughters of the American Revolution genealogical research system, you might find other information out. You may be able to purchase a copy. These are the things that you'll have to work your way through. But one of the ways I found it was I did find my husband's fifth grandfather, and I found it through one of the major websites, and it was a SAR application that someone had filed. Found all the information. I went in and confirmed that information. Again, we all know the number one rule: never just take it
never
for granted
assume
that all that information is correct or that it's your relative. It may not be. But as I researched the information there and correlated it with the information I had, I was quite certain it was him. And going off a little tangent, if I may.
Please do.
We took that information and we knew it was in central Illinois, and we took a drive through that area at one time, and I stopped at the local library. Mm-hmm. And I said, do you have any information on Revolutionary soldiers that served in this area? And I said, this is what I'm looking for. And this little library in the middle of what I would call nowhere, shall go nameless because I'm sure they wouldn't consider themselves nowhere.
No library would consider.
They had a folder, all laminated, 2-page folder of all the patriots from the local and where they were buried. And lo and behold, I found his fifth great-grandfather in that laminated document. We were able to go and find the cemetery and pay our respects. Unfortunately, it was not well maintained. The Boy Scouts were just taking it over, and they are now really saving a lot of that cemetery. But when we say search locally, that's the sort of things you need to do. Sometimes you just go in and ask a question.
I read the other day that 4% of the information in the world is on the internet.
Yep.
So where's the rest?
Locally.
It's in the library. It's in the society. It's in somebody's basement. It's you need to get your boots on the ground.
You need to get your boots on the ground.
Absolutely. And God bless the Boy Scouts for repairing that cemetery, huh?
Amen. I agree.
Yeah. Yes. So speaking of the Daughters of the American Revolution and the Sons of the Revolution, they have an army of volunteers who are ready and willing to help you. And I think you should go on their website if you think you've ascertained your patriot, and fill out their little comment form, and somebody will contact you. And if you're serious about joining them or even wavering about joining them, they will help you make the connections. There'll be somebody local to you that will walk you through that process, who will help you determine if your Jacob Rose is indeed the Jacob Rose who fought in the Battle of Stony Point.
Which is a tremendous help.
Yeah, I mean,
tremendous help.
Pay somebody to do that would be thousands of dollars.
Right.
Definitely.
Another resource is the American Genealogical Biographical Index, also known as the AGBI.
And that's housed in the Godfrey Library in Middletown, Connecticut. And I have to say, I found a little on Ancestry. I had a listing. They wouldn't show you the document. They just told you that it was there. I shot them an email about 10 o'clock one Saturday morning. About 1:30 that afternoon, I had a PDF of the document.
Fabulous.
And I don't even know if I paid. I know in the past it was $10 a thing, but I don't think I paid that time.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the lady was just in the office and had nothing to do and was happy to help me.
which anybody who works in those environments at the
Mhm.
libraries are extremely helpful. But I'm sure you all know that, those of you who are doing this kind of research.
Absolutely. New England Historic Genealogy Society, beautiful building right there on,
Never been there?
oh, it's gorgeous. And I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, if you're traveling there, call me. I'll give you the directions. But if you're not traveling there and you want to do online research, one of the things I love about them is you can have a 3-month membership to all of their online resources. They say it's like 1 billion records. And I think the 3-month membership alone was worth the price just to get the Boston Archdiocese records.
There you go.
Well worth the price of admission.
Excellent.
Yes. Let's go back and talk about looking for your patriot in the census, right? If your patriot is listed in the 1840 census, make sure that you look at page 2, which means the flip side of the document, which you can find at all of the major sites, Ancestry, Family Search, and NARA, and probably Find My Past as well. I've never looked at American records there. I go there for the Irish usually. And there's a line there that will tell you if they were a Revolutionary War soldier. So if your person was a patriot and then they lived to be on the 1840 census, that's the kicker. Then they will admit it right there. They will tell you right there. And then never underestimate your state resources. I know I keep saying I'm a broken record with that, but like we said, 96% of documentation is not on the internet. It's going to be in your little tiny libraries. It's going to be in your historical societies. It's going to be in your genealogy groups.
And let's also say your local cemeteries.
Oh, absolutely.
Always
Without
check
saying.
your local cemeteries.
Mm-hmm.
I say local cemeteries, could be in a family cemetery,
Mm-hmm.
private cemetery. Then, of course, you have state cemeteries, national cemeteries, and some of those, again, you can look online through the VA or through the National Park Service, etc. But don't underestimate the cemeteries.
Have you had the experience of knocking on someone's door and saying, "Hello, I think my ancestor's buried in your backyard"?
I have not experienced that.
I have. It's thrilling and terrifying all at the same time because you finally found your ancestor, but technically you are trespassing. So I would definitely ask permission. It's hard to get people on the phone these days. They think everybody's a telemarketer or wanting to fix their, car warranty. But please ask permission before you go traipsing through somebody's backyard.
Or any small cemetery. If it looks like it's on private property, be sure you get all the right permissions to go.
And then if it looks like somebody's taking really good care of it, maybe offer to make a donation.
Absolutely.
If Bob up in Connecticut is, mowing the lawn at your family cemetery every week, maybe, throwing him some gas money wouldn't hurt.
I agree.
Right? Pay it forward.
And I know this isn't Revolutionary War, and I think we talked about it earlier, but in case we didn't, there's the American military cemeteries outside of the United States for the later wars. And I don't remember if we talked about this, but I want to bring it up again. The American Battle Monuments Commission, ABMC, we'll put it on the thing.
Yeah.
They manage 26 cemeteries in 17 countries. And so if you have a latter war, it would be good to check there.
Yeah. France, Holland, all of those places.
Well, I think we've covered all the battles, have we?
Oh, I want to say one more thing. If you have a relative that was in the Revolutionary War and you think that they lived through the age of photography, maybe the 1840 census, 1850 census, look for the book by Maureen Taylor called The Last Muster. She was able to collect a great deal of photographs of Revolutionary War ancestors. Now, obviously, they're all pretty old men in those photos. But hey, if that was my old man, I would want to know.
Absolutely.
Yes. So we talk about pension applications. We said that those are NARA. Definitely, you need the National Archive for this. And again, I would say the Library of Congress is another great place to look.
Yeah, I think when you're talking any kind of military background, check your government websites, National Archives, Veterans, Department of Defense, any number of things. They all have websites.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We're coming up on Thanksgiving, and we're all very thankful that you're out there listening to us. We plan for 2022 to have a lot more podcasts, and we're planning some excellent things here at the library we hope that you will participate in. We're going to, starting in January, have our regular genealogy programming. We're planning a field trip. And we are planning a big event in April where we're going to help index the 1950 census. So if you're out there and you're planning on using the 1950 census, you should sign up with us so that you can help index it. It's not hard. It's not scary. We will show you exactly what to do, and we'll make it fun. And then we'll all have those records to enjoy throughout the year and years to come. Right?
And we're all about fun.
We are, and genealogy. So if you have an idea for a topic you'd like us to discuss, or if there's a genealogy person that you know that lives in the Pinellas County area that you think we should interview for our podcast, please reach out and let us know. We'd be happy to talk about the things you want to hear. Thanks so much. Happy New Year. Happy Thanksgiving. Merry Christmas. Season's greetings.
Happy Hanukkah.
Bye, Lois. Thank you.
My pleasure, Susan, and I'm looking forward to 2022.
Me too. I have some good ideas already. I think they're good.
They're good.
We'll find out.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.